everybody. My name is Natasha Moore, and I'm a senior at Johnson High School. I grew up on the east side of St. Paul with a mother, father, little brother, and big sister. For most of my elementary days, my mom would stay at home while my dad worked. From a very early age, my mom taught us to always have confidence, push ourselves to be the best person we could be, and to, above all, love ourselves more than we can ever love anyone else. She taught me the most important lesson that I could ever learn, a lesson that until I got involved in Genesis Works, I had almost forgotten. One would say that I had a pretty good childhood. My parents were far from rich, but yet I never felt the struggle. They did an amazing job sheltering us from the world so that when I finally got out of our protective bubble, I was not ready for what I experienced. In the 3rd grade, my parents packed the 5 of us up and moved us out of our cozy but cramped 2-bedroom apartment into a townhouse a few miles away on a street called Glen Ridge. Glen Ridge was a winding road with a hastily thrown together side-by-sides littering the outline of it. The street was always bustling with an overabundance of kids and teenagers. It didn't take long before the excitement of our new house to die down and the real Glenridge began to unfold in front of our eyes. We soon discovered that our new block was nothing but a cesspool of all the African-American criminals, potential criminals, drug dealers, drug addicts, pedophiles, and neglected children in the seemingly innocent Battle Creek neighborhood. We were crammed on top of each other like roaches, and it wasn't hard to understand how easy it was for society to neglect us because we acted like animals. Every day, parents would fist fight in the yards, drunks would argue on porches, and the crack dealers would speed up and down the street in their big fancy cars and stop in front of me to ask where my father was. My father had become the neighborhood crackhead, and I, the crackhead's daughter. Because I was the daughter of a drug addict, I had a lot of responsibility. I had to learn how to lie to monstrous black men with burning red eyes and bulging, veiny muscles. I had to learn how to argue, fight, and defend myself against the boys who snickered and pointed. I also had to learn how to hold my head up high and be proud of my father, because astonishingly, I was the only child on the block who even had one. The time my family spent on Glen Ridge was almost the lowest years of my life. It wasn't only because of my father that my tremendously stressed mother no longer had the mental capacity to love us the way she used to, let alone smile once in a while. It was because of the new perception that I had of my people, African American people. I began to see the difference between blacks and whites in the terms of the way they acted and were treated. I noticed that the houses on my block were falling apart and infested with mice and roaches, while the exact same townhouses owned by the same management on the block over were beautiful and filled with Caucasians. The police hated us, the landlords hated us, and we hated each other. Glenridge is where I learned to despise myself because of the color of my skin. I learned that I would not make it anywhere in life because black people like me just were not successful. An older white woman, the only one who lived on Glenridge, once called me a ghetto bitch for absent-mindedly throwing my popsicle stick on the sidewalk in front of her house. For years after hateful words to an 11-year-old child, I could only see myself as a ghetto bitch, nothing more, nothing less. Over time, I finally got my stuff together. My family moved into a house, my father beat his addiction, and my mother had reverted back into the beautiful, loving woman that I had known from my early childhood. For a while, life was good. Not only was I becoming a star in track and getting good grades in school, but we also had a gorgeous puppy named Digger who slept with me every night. I started to feel proud of myself and my abilities. I began to see the sky opening up for me, and I was just beginning to reach for the stars when once again my world was torn apart. In the second half of 10th grade, my mother and father split up. My mom kicked my dad out, and shortly after, my sister got put out as well. My mother's sanity was slowly slipping away, and me and my little brother was forced to defend ourselves against her wrath all alone. After months of not hearing from our homeless sister and only seeing our homeless dad with a police escort, we got a knock at the door. My father was there, alone. His eyes were red, hands shaky, and his voice cracked. My stomach began to bubble up to my throat and sat there, cutting off my air supply. My father took a trembling breath and managed to smile. He always smiled through anything. He told me that he had gotten in touch with my older sister and found out that she was pregnant by her boyfriend of a few years. By then I was swallowing, trying to keep the knot down with all my might because I was anticipating the next thing he had to tell us, the reason he had come. He diverted his eyes away from me as they filled with tears. My strong, loving, protective daddy shook like a child as he revealed to me and my baby brother that he was moving to Chicago for a few months so he can get help from his family. As I squeezed him tight for the last time, I knew in my heart that I would never see the man who had grown to be my best friend and my security ever again. It had been a little over a year since I said goodbye to my father. In the months following him moving, my mother, brother, and I lost our house and were forced to move back into a 2-bedroom apartment, back in our old neighborhood where we started out. We also had to give away my puppy, Digger. For me, the physical absence of my dad mixed with the mental absence and resulting cruelty of my mother was too much to handle. I fell victim once again to the intense hatred for myself that I had once as a child. I figured that if my dad could leave me so easily and if my mom treat me so bad, then the white lady from years ago must have been right about who I was. The once outgoing and friendly me had inverted it into a shell of nothingness. I was empty. I walked with my head down. I went from tons of friends to absolutely zero. I had no confidence in the person that I was. I felt rejected by the only people in the world who were supposed to dedicate their lives to loving me. So I figured that the world would reject me too. When I surprisingly got accepted into Genesis Works, I had no idea what I had gotten into. On the first day, I walked into class and seen a room full of people who were better than me, smarter, fancier, and more likable. I was so intimidated that every day I would wake up a little nauseous, not knowing if I would make a fool out of myself or not. Around the 4th week or so, I contemplated quitting the program. I completely thought I would not do as good as the other students. However, it didn't take long for my whole attitude to change. After 8 long weeks with Lawrence Classroom 1, I learned a lot about myself and the other students. I learned that they are some of the nicest, most down-to-earth people I know. Not only are they smart and supportive, they came from backgrounds with similar struggles as mine. I looked at every person in my class, and to know that they feel the same way has given me a feeling of personal value and empowerment that I have never felt before. Hearing my classmates and teachers call me things like confident, intelligent, and funny make me feel like they know the real me, the person that I lost when my daddy left. Genesis Works has helped me recover the person that I thought I would never see again, the person that my mother taught me to be from the start. In these 8 weeks of training, I have broken through the shell that my past years of pain has caused me to create. I have learned to love myself again, and this time, it's going to stay this way. Now I would like to present my good friend, Stephen Yang.